My elder brother was about to get married, and I was thrilled. I was excited that a sister-in-law would join our family, bringing joy and life to our home. Our mother had chosen the bride herself. My brother, who lived abroad, was also returning for the wedding. The house was bustling with activity, married sisters visiting frequently, trips to the market, and the sound of drums and songs filling the air. However, I still didn't know who my future sister-in-law was. A few days before the wedding, when my brother returned from abroad, he asked our mother to show him the girl's picture. Mother replied, "They are very modest people. They don't have any pictures of the girl. Only we women have seen her. You'll see her on the wedding day." Hearing this, my brother frowned but said nothing. On the wedding day, amidst the celebration, we went to the bride's house. For the first time, I saw my sister-in-law. She was sitting on the stage among the women, dressed as a bride. My heart nearly stopped. It was clear she was very young, around 15 or 16 years old. Meanwhile, my brother was a fully grown man of 32. Quietly, I whispered to my elder sister, "You were supposed to find a bride for our brother, but you brought home a child." My sister smacked me on the head, placed a finger on her lips, and said, "Be quiet. There are so many people around. If someone hears you, it'll cause a scene. We can't let anything ruin the wedding." I stayed quiet for the moment, but when my sister-in-law arrived at our house after the wedding, my brother's reaction was much the same. He pulled our mother aside and said, "Did you arrange a marriage for me or adopt a child? How can a 15 or 16-year-old be my wife?" Mother looked at him sternly and replied, "You should be happy that I've brought such a beautiful and young girl as your bride. Besides, you'll be returning abroad soon. I'll be the one managing the daughter-in-law here. A young girl will stay under my control. I'll treat her like a daughter. But if I had brought someone older, she would have become uncontrollable." Mother openly explained her reasoning to my brother, who held his head in his hands. On the wedding night, my brother and sister-in-law went to their room, and I sat outside with the sisters, enjoying the music and festivities. A little while later, my mother came and told everyone to go to their rooms and sleep. I got up and left, but my eyes lingered on the closed door of their room. I was young too, and I knew what happened on wedding nights. Curiosity got the better of me, especially since my brother had married such a young girl who might not even fully understand what marriage and its responsibilities entailed. I wanted to eavesdrop on their conversation, but my rational mind stopped me, and I went to my room instead. The next morning, when my sister-in-law stepped out of the room, I couldn't help but stare at her. She looked extremely nervous and shy, her eyes downcast, hands trembling, and body visibly tense. My brother stayed in the room while my mother seated my sister-in-law at the dining table and insisted she join us for breakfast. She barely managed to eat, looking incredibly uncomfortable. As we ate, my mother began explaining the household rules and ways to her, and she simply nodded in agreement. The rest of the day passed in busyness, and the reception ceremony concluded the following day. Once the married sisters left for their homes, I finally got a chance to talk to my sister-in-law. That's when I realized she was a lively and bubbly girl. Perhaps it was because of her age or her natural personality, but she would laugh loudly and talk enthusiastically. She loved watching TV, but whenever my brother was around, she would go completely quiet, nervous and hesitant. I couldn't help but notice this. After the wedding, invitations to dinner started pouring in. My brother, sister-in-law, mother, and I all began attending these events together. My sister-in-law, being a newlywed, was instructed by my mother before leaving the house. "Don't talk much, sit quietly with your head down." And she obeyed my mother's words to the letter. 15 days passed in a flash. My brother and sister-in-law barely spent much time together before the day came for my brother to leave for abroad. On that day, I saw my sister-in-law crying bitterly. Miriam was sobbing uncontrollably until my mother scolded her, saying, "Is this how you behave? Crying like this in front of him will upset him too. He's not leaving you in the wilderness." My mother's harsh tone made Miriam suppress her tears, and my brother left for abroad. From that day, I saw a different side of Miriam. She became completely silent, spending her time either doing household chores or staying locked in her room. 2 months passed since my brother left. During my college break, I was home all day and noticed how much Miriam had changed. There were dark circles under her eyes, as if she was staying up all night. Her face looked pale, and her clothes were often unkempt. She seemed entirely absorbed in household chores. One day I went to the kitchen and stood next to her. At first she looked startled to see me, then asked, "What's the matter, Manawar? Do you need something?" Gently I asked, "What's wrong, Miriam? I understand that my brother isn't here, but that doesn't mean you should let yourself go like this." Hearing this, Miriam looked at me deeply and said, "You care about me?" There was a strange sting in her question. Surprised, I replied, "Of course I care about you." She smiled faintly and said, "Well, at least someone does." I told her not to say things like that, adding, "Mother cares about you a lot, and even my brother calls you regularly." At the mention of my brother, she gave a sarcastic smile and said, "Your brother, sitting across 7 seas, can neither fulfill my needs nor my desires." Handing me a cup of tea, she walked out of the kitchen, leaving me puzzled. 16-year-old Miriam had said something so profound that it left me stunned. She was no longer the carefree and playful girl she once was. She had matured significantly. When she first arrived after her wedding, she was a skinny, frail girl. But gradually, her presence started changing. She looked more mature and grown. Being a 30-year-old man myself, I could sense this transformation in her. Then something strange happened. From that day onward, Miriam started talking to me more. She would come and sit with me, sometimes bringing tea or snacks like fritters. In the evenings, she often joined me in the courtyard, chatting for hours. At first, my mother didn't say anything, but by the 5th day, she came to my room and said, "What does Miriam talk to you about for hours? I brought her here thinking she was a simple, modest girl, but her behavior doesn't seem right. It's better if you keep your distance from her." Hearing this, I was taken aback. "Mother, why are you saying such things?" I asked in disbelief. "She's your sister-in-law and lives in the same house. Can't we even talk?" I asked my mother. She replied, "You don't know how cunning she is. I brought her here thinking she was simple and innocent, but now I realize she's full of deceit. She keeps calling your brother, provoking him. If she could, she'd either move abroad herself or bring your brother back." I was taken aback by my mother's words, but didn't argue with her, knowing it would only lead to more conflict. However, I started keeping some distance from Miriam, my sister-in-law, to avoid causing her any trouble. But Miriam noticed this change and began coming directly to my room under one pretext or another, sitting beside me. I was anxious that my mother might confront me or Miriam, but I couldn't outrightly stop her. One evening, I overheard her talking to my brother on the phone. That's when I understood what my mother was trying to tell me. Miriam was speaking openly, saying, "It's becoming impossible for me to live alone. I can't manage like this. Either call me to you or come back yourself. I'm a living, breathing person. I have natural needs and desires, but you don't seem to care about any of it." Her words and their underlying meaning were all too clear to me. I felt genuinely sorry for her. After hanging up, she started crying uncontrollably. I went to her, and she rested her head on my shoulder, sobbing. Her action left me utterly stunned, but I realized she wasn't in her right mind, so I didn't make her aware of how awkward the situation was for me. After crying for a while, she went back to her room. Days passed like this. My brother didn't return, nor did he call her to join him. I noticed their conversations became less frequent. Miriam spent her days quietly, either doing household chores or sitting with my mother. Then it was time for my engagement. My marriage had been arranged with Yasmin, and the engagement ceremony was celebrated with great joy and fanfare. Miriam dressed up beautifully for the occasion, but there was no trace of happiness on her face. That night, she came to my room to place the engagement gifts. I asked her, "Miriam, how do you like Yasmin?" She looked at me with an unusual expression and said, "Yasmin is very nice, but I don't want you two to get married so soon." Surprised, I asked, "Why would you say that? The wedding is 6 months away?" She came closer and said, "Because then I'll lose you too." She looked at me deeply before leaving the room. I stood there for a long time, rooted in place. I had become friendly with Miriam and spoken to her so she wouldn't feel lonely, but I couldn't understand what she thought of our relationship. Months passed, and Yasmin finally came home after our wedding. That night, I saw tears in Miriam's eyes. She looked deeply distressed, busying herself with chores but giving the impression that she wanted to say something to me. However, we didn't speak. I had started my married life with Yasmin. We were very happy together. Yasmin was my aunt's daughter and very dear to my mother. She quickly became the favorite of everyone in the family. Mother would keep Yasmin close to her at all times, constantly asking her to dress up and telling Miriam to apply henna to her hands, saying, "She's a new bride. Henna-stained hands look beautiful." Miriam, after finishing her chores, would sit and apply henna to Yasmin's hands. 2 weeks after my wedding, Yasmin went to stay at her parents' house. Coincidentally, my younger sister's health deteriorated as her delivery was near, so she called my mother to stay with her. Mother left to care for my sister, leaving just Miriam and me at home. Around 1 a.m., there was a knock on my room door. When I opened it, Miriam was standing there. Her appearance was strange, her eyes filled with tears, and it seemed as though she had been crying for hours. Seeing her like this startled me. She entered the room and sat on my bed. Her gaze shifted between me and the floor, and I asked, "Miriam, what's wrong? If there's a problem, please tell me." She softly said, "It's not a problem. It's pain, and it's unbearable." I looked at her in confusion, and she continued, "Yasmin is wonderful, but I'm not a bad person either." "Then why am I treated like this?" Not understanding her meaning, I asked, "What do you mean, Miriam?" She replied, "Don't you think I deserve love too? When I came to this house, I was just a 15 or 16-year-old girl. Now I'm 17. I've given this house so much time, and I've given you so much time, but in return, I've received nothing. How long must I endure this loneliness? Don't you see my feelings, my desires?" I sat there silently, watching her. Her unease was evident. Today I wanted to understand what was truly in her heart. Then she said something that left me utterly shocked. Miriam wanted a night with me, a companionship I could not give her, even if I wanted to. I told her, "This is impossible. If Mother finds out, she'll kill me." And what would I say to Yasmin? Miriam took my hand and said, "I've never asked anything from you before. I've quietly endured my days in this house, but I can't take it anymore. When I see Yasmin, it burns me inside. I came into this house as a bride, just like her. But what did I get in return, except loneliness and sorrow? What is my fault?" Miriam burst into tears, and I hesitated before placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Fine," I said. "I'll give you the support you want, but just once." Her face lit up with sudden happiness. She nodded quickly in agreement, and I decided to go along with her request. Yasmin wasn't home, and Mother wasn't around, so agreeing to Miriam's plea felt easier. Besides, I wasn't blind to the turmoil in her heart. I knew how she was feeling. If I didn't offer her support, she might look for it elsewhere. That night, I took Miriam out of the house. We spent the entire night outside, and just as the morning call to prayer rang out, we returned home. But when we entered the house, my heart sank. Mother was there, staring at us with piercing eyes. She walked up to Miriam and slapped her hard across the face. "Shameless! Disgraceful! Where have you been all night wandering around behind your husband's back? I've already called your husband and told him everything. Now he'll deal with you." Mother glared at me and asked, "Where were you wandering around with her? Don't you have any shame? Didn't I tell you she's a characterless woman? Stay away from her." Hearing her words, I couldn't hold back anymore. Anger surged through me, and I shouted back. How could I stay silent when she was accusing a noble and virtuous woman like Miriam of such things? I yelled, "Miriam is not characterless or bad. If anyone is wrong, it's you, Mother. It's because of you that Miriam was forced to choose this hidden path. She had to act in the dark, as if committing a sin, just to seek relief from her pain." Mother stared at me furiously and retorted, "That woman has turned you against me. You've fallen for her lies. I didn't do anything wrong to her." Mother grabbed Miriam by the hair, saying, "You shameless woman. You've driven both my sons away from me and turned them against me." Miriam said nothing, but I stepped in between them, prying Mother's hands from Miriam's hair. I said, "Mother, fear God. Ever since you brought Miriam into this house, you haven't allowed her a moment's peace. On the very first day at the breakfast table, you dictated every single thing she could or couldn't do, from how she should sleep to how she should wake up. You handed her a long list of household chores and denied her and my brother even a moment of privacy. Whenever they went out, you insisted that you and I accompany them. Even when my brother was leaving for abroad, you didn't allow Miriam to go with him to the airport. When she cried at home after he left, you scolded her and made her stop. After my brother left, you got a 24-hour unpaid servant in Miriam. Isn't that why you specifically chose such a young daughter-in-law? So that you could control her, enslave her for life? You knew your son was living abroad, unaware of the realities here and unable to return. You manipulated him to believe whatever you told him, just like you did before. During my younger sister's wedding, you repeatedly lied to my brother to extract money from him. You've done the same this time. You collected a lot of money in Miriam's name, but didn't care for her needs or desires. Instead, you spent all that money on your daughters and turned Miriam into a servant. You even sowed discord between my brother and his wife. Don't think I don't know how distant they've become because of you. You told my brother that Miriam is characterless, that she has affairs with other men. That's what you think, right? And using that excuse, you stopped her from visiting her parents' home. She was longing for her family, crying for them, and when Yasmin went to her parents' house, Miriam couldn't bear the disparity. If Yasmin could visit her family, why couldn't Miriam? Her mother was sick, and she missed her terribly. That's why I took her to see her ailing mother. What was wrong with that? If you had allowed her to go in broad daylight with your permission, she wouldn't have had to secretly ask me to take her in the dead of night. I was so angry that I revealed the entire truth to my mother without a second thought. I held up a mirror to her actions because I had witnessed Miriam's suffering. I knew how unfairly she had been treated, how lonely and distressed she was. Miriam came from a poor family. Her mother was sick, and she had no father to support her. My mother had taken full advantage of her vulnerability, and I had stayed silent all this time. But now, after my marriage and seeing Yasmin, I realized the extent of the injustice done to Miriam. She truly had endured a great deal. Yasmin had my companionship, my mother's support, and the freedom to visit her parents. She would go out with me, and my mother didn't burden her with many household responsibilities. But for some reason, my mother seemed to hold a grudge against Miriam. She made Miriam's life extremely difficult. After hearing everything I had to say, my mother quietly went to her room and didn't come out again. Miriam looked at me with tearful eyes, as if silently thanking me for taking her to see her sick mother. She had spent the entire night by her mother's side, crying, and seeing her in such pain deeply saddened me. I realized how many months she had been unable to visit her family. I thought to myself that if I had opened my eyes sooner and stood up for her, things wouldn't have come to this point. I decided to call my brother and tell him everything. After listening to me, my brother called my mother. I don't know what he said, but after that, my mother's behavior toward Miriam changed. The household chores were divided equally between Miriam and Yasmin, and now they both shared the responsibilities. Miriam was also given permission to visit her family. Once a week, she would go and spend time with her mother. She often expressed her gratitude to me, saying, "Manawar, I can never forget what you've done for me." But her words made me feel embarrassed because it was my duty to look after her in my brother's absence, not to turn a blind eye to her struggles. 2 months later, my brother returned home for his holidays. He apologized to Miriam for his behavior, and after that, Miriam truly blossomed like a rose. My brother arranged for her passport and took her with him abroad for some time. After Miriam left, my mother felt her absence deeply and realized her value. She came to appreciate her daughter-in-law, recognizing that Miriam had managed the household excellently. Despite all the injustices, Miriam had never argued with my mother. She had quietly endured everything. After some time, my mother sincerely apologized to Miriam, and all the broken relationships in our family were restored. Harmony and understanding returned to our household once again.